driveway. Okay. Can we have your attention, please? We'll be starting shortly. Who has Westview Road? Okay. You guys ready? Good evening, and welcome to the June 5th, 2008 Lowell Planning Board meeting. Tonight we do have 3 public hearings on the agenda. The first public hearing we have is 250 Westview Road. A public hearing will be held to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Joseph McNamee and Sheila Mahoney for a special permit review of the project located at above address. The proposal is for construction of a single-family residence on a parcel totaling 212,748 square foot lot located at the southern end of Westview Road and made accessible by a 342-foot driveway. Wetlands existing on-site are located predominantly at the southern and northwestern portions of the parcel, with the house located to the south and east of the nearest wetlands, providing a minimum 65-foot setback. The project is located in the suburban single-family zoning district and requires special permit review under section 6.7.2 driveway length for the Lowell zoning ordinance. So basically what happened is they need a special permit for the length of the driveway. May we hear the case for the applicant, please? Good evening. We need the green light if that helps, then it should work.
Good evening, Matt Waterman with Land Tech Consultants. Here with me is Sheila Mahoney and Joseph McNamee, the applicant for tonight's special permit for a driveway in excess of 300 feet under section 6.7.2 of the subdivision zoning bylaw. Property is located at 250 Westview Street in the Highland section of Lowell. On the plan, to the top side of the plan, this is Rindo Park Drive, an existing portion of the Highlands, and Westview Road is shown down in the lower left-hand corner. The planning board is probably aware recently Westview Road was extended and is a private road approximately the last 400 feet or so. The property is 4.99 acres and has been before the board. It was back in 2000. There was an application before the board to do a 5-lot subdivision, which gained access actually off of Rindo Park Drive. That was at about, I think it was 99, or the year 2000. At that time, the planning board denied the preliminary subdivision, and the Mahoneys picked up the property in an effort to limit development of this property. The Mahoneys now are in front of the board to request permission to build one single-family house. The footprint is roughly 4,200 square feet, accessed by a single driveway that comes through a wetland. We have permission from Conservation Commission with a small turnaround, a garage, the main house, and then there's a pool area. The existing lot conforms to building. It's in a zone SSF. Does not require any other special permits or permits in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Slopes generally are pretty gradual. There's no real, in the design of the driveway, the Mahoneys were, Route 3 is off to the south on this property, and so there was a desire to push this house as far away from Route 3 as possible. This opened up the back of the lot, gained the southern exposure to the lot, and then also with the grades and work in a driveway, the real gradual grades to get to this this dry upland up and through here. So that was some of the thought process in locating the house and situating the house in this area here. The dwelling is located outside the 50-foot wetland buffer in accordance with zoning. There's a 100-foot buffer shown and then a 50-foot buffer. And as you can tell by the location of the wetlands, it pushes the house further away from Westview Road and greater than 300 feet. It's roughly 350 feet to the far side of the driveway. As I said, Conservation has approved this project. We feel that with the design and the location, no real steep grades, the turnaround at the ends, that we meet the safety and any concerns the planning board would have for a special permit with longer driveways. We have received comments back from various departments. First and foremost, we met with the fire department. The contractor and myself went and met with the fire prevention officer. At first, he had recommended a turnaround of sorts for a fire truck, but then it was not negotiated, but it was decided that they're going to put in and install a fire suppression system so that this building will be sprinklered. So once the fire prevention officer was that gave him a comfort level that he didn't need to necessarily get his large fire truck in as quickly a time. So he just had comments that as long as the building is sprinklered, there's existing hydrants on Westview, one that's just off the page, that he would just need to get his fire truck in and then he'd be able to back out, and he had some width requirements. The engineering department had comments. I submitted a revised letter back to Lisa, hopefully addressing all of her comments. Hers were more along the lines of stormwater management and making sure that vegetative buffers were provided prior to discharging any of the stormwater into the wetlands. And then again, she had a concern with the width of the driveway. We'd be happy to answer any questions, and Shayla and Joe are here also to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to speak on behalf of the applicant first? Anybody else with you like to speak?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to the public at this point in time. Anybody here like to speak in favor of this project? In favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anybody here like to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. At this point in time, I'll turn it over to any comments that any of the board members may have. Any board members have any comments or questions? Mr. Lockhart?
Regarding
The fire department had a minimum width of 12 feet, and the driveway is depicted as 12 feet. Lisa DeMaio, the city engineer, just was concerned about traffic passing each other. We're working with the landscape architect to keep plantings and to provide a grass shoulder so that if there is a conflict with vehicles entering and exiting, that you'd be able to pull onto the grass shoulder, and there won't be plantings pushed right up against the driveway. Correct. This is the turnaround. This does not support a wheelbase of 33-foot fire truck, the shorter fire truck. But the fire department only wants the ability to have the proper width. And if it was the fire suppression system was installed, he did not require the access turnaround for a full fire truck.
Mr. Genvin, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Linehan. So in general, I think this looks like a good project. I think a quality, high-end, single-family home like this is an asset to the neighborhood, and certainly is better than having a larger subdivision in there, which is something that could be addressed. In projects like this in the past, we've been able to, or we've requested and had deed restrictions put on the property so that it couldn't be further subdivided. Is that something that the applicant would be willing to? I think that's something that I'd like to see, is to set it up so that the property is going to be a single family. And I think that was your intention, just so that in the future, years from now, it couldn't be further subdivided and have a subdivision in there. Yeah, go ahead.
One of the questions we might have in that, Mr. Chairman, is with all the wetlands, I don't know if they can get, the size of that lot now, they might have a problem with it. When they tried to come in before, they tried to come in on Mindo Park, because I remember the board members, we all went up there and we met and we walked the whole site, and they would have got most of them in, but I think now, one of the concerns that you see where the single-family home is so large, and with the wetlands, I don't know if they could have a problem getting in, and if they did, they'd have to come back before us anyway, so that alleviates a little bit of concern. Where before, obviously, the houses and the lots were gonna be more like 10,000 square feet, where now he has this one at, it's so much bigger in the wetlands, so that alleviates a little bit of some of the concern. Where before, they were gonna configure it, would it be all smaller, where this house here is a lot bigger in size, but they have no problem with deed restriction, obviously, I have no problem with it as well.
That was not a question that we were prepared to answer at this time. Initially talking, their goal would to not restrict it tonight, but if the board was to require that, they would probably like some more time to think about it.
Well, one of the questions I have, with the wetlands and the size of the lot you have there anyways, what else could you bring in on that site? I mean, before, when the 5 lots were gonna come in, which the board declined, those lots were a lot smaller.
Correct.
And the size of that lot there, and the way it is proposed now, and with the wetlands on the site and where you located that lot, where could you possibly put in another single-family lot anyway? And then if it came in, depending where, the question would be, would you have to come back? You have to come back before us anyways, I believe. And the question was, even if you if you had a driveway, obviously over the 200, you have to come back again for another special permit, which requires 4 out of 5 votes.
Correct. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the way that it's set up now, that there isn't a way, unless we came before the planning board, to carve off an A&R lot without a special permit.
Can I take it, all your dark green, is that the conservation?
Correct. This is, the lime green or the olive color is the wetlands. And then the dark green was the forested area. There has been some additional clearing since this plan was drawn, or originally proposed back in November. So, I mean, I think you'd be hard pressed to get a second house in through here. There's access issues with the dwelling at 101 Rainbow Park Drive and trying to get a driveway into this access. But I guess they would like to either confer with their council or...
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Gendron? You got anything else? No? Mr. Fischett?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Once again, I'll echo Mr. Gendron's sentiments regarding seeing this type of development happen on that site. Certainly something that I think will enhance the neighborhood and compared to some of the proposals that had been before the board. A question, because it really hinges on fire safety with the length of the driveway. And I know apparently some work had started out there, and foundation being in, obviously that you can't, well, it could be relocated, I want to see that, but have you adequately tested the pressures of the line? I mean, as far as able to support, is that able to support a sprinkler system? I just want to make sure that, because we're kind of limited with some of the options, if in fact that there's some water pressure issues over there.
Yeah, and a portion of the foundation has been constructed in the garage portion. The Mahoney's proceeded with that under the at their own risk.
Sure.
The building department would not issue foundation for the residential portion of the house. But they wanted to, at their own risk, to proceed with the garage. As you recall, Westview Road was recently extended. In talking to the contractor and talking to the water department, he said that there was no issues with water pressure on this end of Westview. They would have to do a pressure test. They would have to have a design engineer, the fire suppression engineer design what's the minimum pressure, what's the diameter of the pipe they need, and things like that. They haven't gone to that step yet.
They did the pressure test, but they haven't done the final design.
Okay.
And the pressure support system.
Okay, and that's my concern. I would hate to see you, you know, we approve it, and then you get into framing it, and then, you know,
They did the pressure test.
sure.
If you could just speak at the microphone that way so people at home can pick up the conversation instead of just hearing Mr. Fichette sound like he's talking to himself.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Yep, they did do the pressure test, and it supports the system, and they submitted that to the fire department. But they haven't designed the final system yet.
Okay, because it's more, even for consideration for yourself, would hate to see work progress even further and then have a real problem with the water pressure out there. That's really the only comment I had, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, that was the biggest concern, and that's really the main reason why we have this in the ordinance, is to make sure that it meets fire or emergency vehicle safety, and that was the biggest concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Claremont?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, the sprinkler system that you're planning to install, was the specific system at the recommendation of the fire department? I saw some notes back and forth.
Initially, the fire department's recommendation was a hydrant within 300
Right.
feet, 350 feet, and a turnaround for a 33-foot fire truck. Once we did some of the cost analysis on sprinklering it, putting the sprinkler system inside of it, the building, went back, talked to the fire chief again. He didn't, of course, he would recommend that. He would sprinkler every building in town if he could. But when he was told that this would be sprinklered, he was less concerned about getting his fire trucks and having access to the water. There is a hydrant here. Obviously, this is less than 300 feet. He was going to hold us to a stricter standard if we didn't have the fire suppression system. So we do have a hydrant. You would just have to take the hose through the woods versus down.
No, I think you're better off with the sprinkler system anyway, but my question was, in terms of the final plans for the type of system you're going to install, that's being done at the suggestion of the fire department, or how is that plan being reviewed?
It gets reviewed and approved by the fire protection
By the fire
officer.
department? Okay, all right. I mean, this plan is before us for a waiver for the driveway length, so I think our decision is based upon whether we feel it provides adequate safety, safe access for fire apparatus, emergency apparatus. I think it's a good plan. I think it does, obviously provide the access as indicated by the fire department. I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable tonight with a deed restriction because I wouldn't want one box in the applicant. Two, I'm not sure what else can go out there, but whatever does need to be proposed in the future would have to come back before this board or a future board, so I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable with a deed restriction when that's not what's before us, just the driveway length. So that's all the comments I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Claremont. Just a couple of brief comments. As indicated, we walked the site years ago when it went to put the 5 developments in there. We had some concerns that were not met by the applicant, and that's the main. Actually, we listed 7 concerns, and engineering did not abide by those recommendations by us. And we didn't walk that site with the neighbors at the time. And some of the recommendations we had, when it came back for final plan, the engineering did not have them on the plan. And that was one of the main reasons why the project was denied. And then we understood that the project was bought off to put a single-family home in there. And I was up there again a couple weeks ago, and I spoke with a gentleman on site by the name of Mr. Moss, and we did walk over the site, we looked it over. I was very familiar with the hydrant was because when Mr. Beatty put his project in, that was a requirement that is there. And we did go and look at the hydrant, and basically, I could tell the fire department couldn't get the hose through there because it's pretty thickly settled there with the woods now, and indicated that the option would either be to put the hydrant down the end. Basically, he said he already had a chance to speak with the fire department, and they were thinking of either the sprinkler system. I told him the main concern on the section that we have tonight is for special permit for the driveway length is basically what we, as advertised as 6.7.2, the planning board grants a special permit after determination that said driveway will provide safe and reasonable access for emergency vehicles and the fire department. And the fire department is the biggest one with the concern getting in there. So the fact that the fire department, we did receive comments, as indicated that they talked about the hydrant, and they were also comfortable with the fire sprinkler system. Obviously, I think the fire sprinkler system would be more effective in putting out a fire than wait until the fire department gets up there and have to run the hose up to it. Also, for family safety, if there's people at home or young children in the house, obviously, that's a safety consideration. Also, the fact, when you put this sprinkler system in, I know also it is a benefit for the homeowner for the cost of the home insurance. So therefore, with the recommendation from the fire department that they have no problem with the sprinkler system, I have no problem with this project as well. Thank you. At this point in time, any further discussion from the board? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the special permit for the driveway length, find that it provides safe and reasonable access for the fire and emergency vehicles. I suggest as a condition that the fire department have final approval of the sprinkler system that's going to be installed.
I'll second the motion.
Motion is made and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Well,
Aye.
Aye.
all right. Chair votes yes. Project is approved, 5 in favor and none against. Good luck. Wish you well. The next public hearing is 104 West Meadow Road, also known as Reeder Street Extension. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing regarding an application by Loon Hill Development, Inc., for an approval of a definitive subdivision plan for 308,845 square foot property located at 104 West Meadow Road, situated at the end of Reeder Street. The proposal includes 5 new residential lots totaling 115,768 square feet access via a new 163-foot roadway extension off Reeder Street and 191,837 square feet of land to remain as city-owned conservation land. The site is in the traditional single-family zoning district. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. George Cielides Jr., 133 Market Street, Lowell. And I'm here this evening in behalf of Loon Hill Development, the applicant of this particular project. With me this evening is Dan Chasey and Timothy Juzak. They are the 2 principals of the organization, and Mr. Brem, I'm sure you're familiar with, who will be shortly giving you a better outline of the plan itself and what it contains. To begin with, I think we had a preliminary discussion in accordance with the board rules here and an outline of the plan. I just want to say that since that time, we appeared both before the Zoning Board of Appeals as well as the Conservation Commission, both of whom approved our applications there by a 5-0 vote. And obviously, I want to also again thank the board for putting its plus in on with reference to the single issue of the setback from the street on the front of the house. But in any event, just by way of a quick history concerning this parcel and the development that is proposed, this parcel of land is owned by the city of Lowell, and it was put out for RFP for proposals for someone to build 5 houses on the property. It's a large property in Pawtucketville, on the West Meadow Road, what's now more or less, or to be referred to as Reeder Street Extension. And to begin with, I think one of the critical items that I want to point out is that even though the RFP called for the sale of a much larger piece of land, and I think if you could, Jeff, show the rest of it went up, way up there. My clients, when they put in their bid and then subsequently met with the various departments in the city concerned with the development and how it might be done, sat down and they all agreed that probably for the best benefit of everybody to come into this rather compact area at the end of what would be West Meadow to a cul-de-sac and build the 5 lots there. The nice part of that is the rest of the land that Jeff just pointed out a minute ago, and I'll ask him to point out again, will all remain to the city for conservation land. And the 5 houses will be built only on the land that you see here. The other nice part of it is that every single one of these lots will be at least 12,000 square feet, and the biggest one, which is sort of at the bottom of the triangle on the left, I think it is, or one of those two are both 23 or 20, more than a half an acre. So we're not talking about squeezing something onto small pieces of land here. From the city standpoint, the sales price and my clients were far ahead of anybody else who made an offer on this property. My clients will be paying the city $310,000 in free cash that will be for the benefit of everybody in the city of Lowell and our taxes and our tax rate, et cetera. And in addition to that, the 5 houses we estimate will generate at least another $25,000 or $35,000 a year in new tax revenue to the city from real estate property taxes. In addition to that, and Jeff will go into more detail on some of the other particulars of the land, but I just want to highlight for you now the fact that as part of the project we propose to obviously extend and build a new road there, but in addition to that, bring in a new sewer line, which isn't in the area at all right now. The 3 houses that are currently, and maybe you could just sort of, the 3 houses that are currently in that spot are all on septic systems. So we'll be bringing a new sewer line in that they can attach to, should they choose to attach to it, and we'll be upgrading the water service there also from the same point right up to that spot, and all of those folks can have the benefit of an upgraded water line as well. I think it's also important, we'll be bringing a hydrant down there. You might point that out, Jeff. And we also, in order to accommodate some of the neighbors, there was one house that it turns out was encroaching on some of the land owned by the city, and Jeff is pointing that area out. We intend to convey, as part of this transaction, the parcel of land to preserve that person's shed so that they don't have to move it there along the way. I think that another very important element here is, and this was something that we had planned and talked about anyways, but in addition to when we met with the Conservation Commission folks who approved, I want to stress this again, 5-0 our plan, one of the most important things is that we agreed that we would take down as few trees as we possibly could as part of the development, because obviously everyone in the neighborhood is concerned about that, as are my clients, because they've always been very cautious when it comes to that kind of thing. I mentioned this at our previous appearance here, and I've mentioned it at the other 2 boards too. My clients are well respected by all of the various city organizations with whom they deal, and they have the reputation of being the builders of some of the finest new homes and condominiums in the area here. The Hildreth Street condominiums up by the supermarket, the ones behind Cavaliero's restaurant are just the nice new condominium developments they've done, and they've done a number of very nice single-family homes as well. They're highly respected and hard-working individuals who don't cut corners and who want to have a good project. They obviously understand that it's to their benefit to put together a nice project because they have to sell them, and in a market like today's market, they know that's not going to be easy. But I started to say, and I just want to make the point, we're going to establish an association as part of the project itself, whose responsibility it will be to maintain and monitor any of the wetlands issues. There's a detention pond that's in the back area there on the right, and any other issues that relate to what their common ownership might be. And we obviously agreed, but we were intending in the first instance, in any event, to spell out both the establishment of the association and its responsibilities before any deed is ever put out on this property to convey any houses. So that is not a problem. That can be a condition that we've already agreed to with the Conservation Commission, and we certainly will make sure. I think it's mentioned in the city engineer's report too, if I'm not mistaken, and we will make sure that it's done to the satisfaction of the city engineer's department. So basically, I think I touched upon most of the things that I wanted to touch upon to at least give you a brief outline of the project itself. I know Mr. Bevere is here from the city. He's the man in charge of city-owned properties, and he can certainly answer any questions you might have with regard to the process itself. As I mentioned, Jeff and my clients are here, and we're willing to obviously answer any other questions you might have after everyone else has an opportunity to speak, or at any point you'd like us to do. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Jeff,
Council.
Jeff, go
Chairman,
ahead.
if you indulge me, I'll go over some of the details of the plan. Again, my name is Jeffrey Brem, representing Mazda Brem Corporation and my client's Loon Hill Development, who George introduced. Location of the property on this map, north is in this direction. Mammoth Road generally runs north. It's probably over here. Columbia Road comes in. This is Jean Diac Street. This is Rita Street. Columbia Road currently dead ends at that open space portion of the parcel. Rita Street is built to here currently. It's a little bit substandard. Construction is, I think, about a 22-foot pavement. There are 3 houses on it. There's a 2-inch water line, and as George said, there's no sewer line. So these are very small houses and small lots, with septic systems currently. This property of the 7 acres, we're developing on 2.65 acres, as George mentioned. And this is the lower end of the property. The topography runs in this direction. A low of 56 down here to the southeast, and a high of 70 pretty much at where we're tying into Rita Street. So there's a somewhat of a slope to the property itself. Rita Street itself also has a fairly significant grade at the beginning as it approaches Columbia. The vegetation on the site, it's fully wooded. This whole entire parcel is wooded. Just off the parcel, as I mentioned at the preliminary hearing that we had, there is a wet meadow, a large wet meadow associated between this property and the hospital. But on the property itself, it's fully wooded. It's a mixed hardwood, softwood, and typical wetland plants. There are 2 distinct wetland areas. This one on the northeast drains to the east to that large wet meadow associated with behind the hospital. And then there's a perennial stream, a river, let me get my orientation, that flows in this direction along here, and alongside the river there's bank, obviously, and other resource areas that conservation had to deal with. They have a 25-foot riverfront area, buffer zones and so forth, and a vegetated wetland that you see in brown here associated with that river. I'll just jump to it. We went in front of conservation. Obviously there's a lot of regulations and rules, state and local, and we complied with all those, and they granted us, as George mentioned, a order of conditions last week. So they're comfortable with the plan, though I do know that Aaron has a comment to help, which I'll get to in a little bit. The soils on the site, we did some soil probes, and they're for the drainage system, and they're a typical till material. I think some 2 minute an inch, some 7 minute an inch soil, which is perfectly fine to discharge and infiltrate into the ground. And that's pretty much the way the site looks as it exists. Currently, though, the only thing I'd like to add to that is currently Rita Street drains kind of in an open system, and there's a little channel that's developed right here. And so all this flow kind of comes down into this channel and eventually into the wetland areas. This portion here flows into these wetland areas. It's completely uncontrolled. What we've done in our discussions with the city engineer's office is started to control that. Number one, we're going to be, once we do the work that George mentioned, by extending the sewer line and extending and reconstructing the water line and building it to the city standards, and making it available to the landowners adjacent to it. Once that's all done, we'll be repaving Rita Street, so there'll be a new surface on that, and no cost to the city. Once we get onto our property, there's a 156-foot Rita Street extension, and there's like a 40-foot transition zone that we go into Rita Street, and we have to do a full reconstruction of this portion right here. On our property, we're just building a terminus, a cul-de-sac in accordance with the city regulations. It's a 45-foot outside radius. It's a 45-foot width. We match up to a 40-foot width, so at this point here, it matches, and there's a little 5-foot jog on the easterly side. But our roadway is the required 45 feet. As George mentioned, we're in the TSF zone, requiring 55 feet of frontage and 7,000 square feet of area. We comply with that regulation in all respects, but we point out, as George did, that these lots are significantly over the 7,000 square feet. The minimum is 12,000, and the maximum, like he said, is 4 times the minimum of 28,000. That's here. We talked about house locations. As you know, you have a minimum and maximum setback. We comply with all those except for on Lot 4, which we discussed at your hearing, and I also thank you for sending in a letter to the Board of Appeals. They did grant the variance due primarily to this wetland finger that kind of jogs into the lot, and there's no really other way to configure this. The normal location of this house would be in or basically on top of the wetlands. There was no way to comply with the minimum and maximum without asking for a variance, and so therefore the Board of Appeals did grant us the variance. They concurred, and the variance was granted was to the maximum setback. And as you know, Lowell's certainly unique in the area that I do business in having a maximum setback. And in this particular lot, it does certainly make sense to vary the rules for that one lot. Mainly because the reason why you had that setback in the first place is so that you have created some kind of order when you go down the streets. This is at the very, very terminus of the street. It's really not as applicable as it would be if it was along the row. So with all that said, the variance was granted, and this is the location of the lot, and it complies in all respects with all the other regulations of the city, zoning, planning, and conservation. Which leads me to the big question, what are we doing with drainage? We're picking up this flow from Rita Street with 2 catch basins, and so this is a pipe system to a discharge point here, riprap dissipation to dissipate some of the energy, and that goes into a 4-bay, and that's to let the material settle. I'm sure you've been familiar with all this, but for the audience, it allows the runoff to settle a little bit, and then over time it spills over into the main detention area, and this is essentially a large bowl formed with the ground to hold back some of the runoff and store it and release it at a rate that's similar to the pre-development rate. And in all storm events, that is the case. We've got a review from the city engineer that concurs, so you've had a full review on this. And like I said, we put a test pit to verify that our infiltration rates are real. They're not just estimated or guessed. We actually had it here, but when we made a change, we had to do another test pit, and we actually did that. So in your packages, I'm sure, because we've got similar ones, we've gotten some reviews. You've seen this in a preliminary sense not too long ago. The Board of Appeals has approved it. Conservation's approved it. Our other simple approvals, our Building Department, Board of Health, both had no objections. Wastewater had no objections. I don't know if I'm stealing your thunder, Aaron. Is this something that you want to do?
Feel free.
Okay. The Water Department had a few details that we need to add to the plan, turning right on the hydrants and certain valves and details that we will certainly add to the plan. Fire Department said that they have no objections as long as their engine can turn around, and my comment to that is we meet your regulation for the turnaround. This is not a T-type turnaround or a Y like they have in some. This is a full cul-de-sac turnaround, so, which complies with your rules and regulations. And planning has, I'm sorry, let's go to engineering first. Engineering had 6 or 7 comments, all generally in essence, favorable. Their details, they were pleased with our operation and maintenance report. The word they used is good. And then they have requirements. I guess we would consider them as conditions. I don't think anything's going to change the plan at all. So we've got a very clean review from engineering. Planning, Aaron had wrote in a memo, and if you'll allow me to continue, I'll try to condense it. And you're certainly willing to elaborate afterwards. He has spent a lot of time discussing in his memo the background, what we're proposing, and then he goes into a condition. We had proposed a sidewalk to go from here to there and terminate. And Aaron had quite a bit of effort in recommending to this board that be continued all the way around and back through. And after some discussion on our end, we've agreed to do that. The question is, where does a road need a sidewalk on both sides? It's required on one side. I'm thinking that's one side. What Aaron was saying is he thinks it should go on both sides. It's essentially your discretion. I'm making it easy for you. We're agreeing to it, so we don't have to have this debate at all. His other comments, he also indicates that should have a buffer strip, which we are providing, so that there could be some plantings. The homeowners association, as George mentioned, needs to be established, and I'm sure you're going to condition that in any approval that you get it to be part of that establishment to make sure that the detention basin is maintained. The curb cuts, we have to make, I think, 2 of them a little bit smaller to comply with your regulation. That's fine. And the big issue is the tree line. We show a tree line that goes into the 50-foot zone in a couple locations on Lot 3. And he asked us if we could move that tree line and kind of do what George said, is maximize the trees here. And we can do that as well with a condition. And I think that's between, if you indulge Aaron and I, we could do that between ourselves. So a condition, as he's written, is acceptable to us. And we could work with staff on making that minor adjustment. With all that said, I think we have a generally clean review. We did, like I said, with one more thing. I'm sorry. Your requirement is bituminous curbing or vertical curbing. You probably know that. I think you're about to change that. As long as I've ever been in the city of Lowell, we've always done vertical granite curbing. It's vertical granite curbing. We've proposed that right from the beginning. My clients are in Lowell. I'm in Lowell. We know this. So we didn't even bother asking for the variance and getting denied. We just went with the vertical granite curbing. And we're doing the sidewalk, like I said. The traffic engineer has a comment to you, which for some reason is not in my package, but I remember what it was, and I talked to him today, as well as Aaron, that the sidewalk should be made out of concrete. Your regulations require either bituminous or concrete, and I think he comes from the fact that when they do add sidewalks to this neighborhood, they're through the CDBG grants and others, that they intend to have them be concrete if they can. On our point of view, we're essentially building a sidewalk that begins nowhere and ends nowhere, and the regulations right now are written so that we can choose to do bituminous or concrete, and as I understand it, that is shortly to be changed, which is fine, but we are proposing to do bituminous as part of what we're doing here. Doing sidewalks in neighborhoods, you hire a sidewalk company, it's a very different operation than in a new road. Mostly the sidewalks on a new road are done by the same guy that does the paving, generally at the same time. Concrete sidewalks is a whole different operation. It's completely different. And like I said, this is a sidewalk that begins nowhere and ends nowhere. And I actually talked to Jeff today, Jeff Gomes, that this portion is very, very difficult. It's very narrow here. There's probably going to be easements and right-of-ways necessary. And it probably would be best to minimize the work anyway. And concrete takes a lot more land on each side of the sidewalk to build for forming and so forth. This may be the best bet to be asphalt up to here, and then from here on maybe go to concrete. And he didn't disagree. He didn't necessarily agree with me, but he didn't disagree either. So my suggestion is when you see this and when he sees this and does this work, that it probably will end up being asphalt anyway. So, but bottom line is it's the developer's choice, and we're choosing that. I just want you to know that's why. It wasn't just, and let's be honest, concrete costs certainly much more than asphalt. We're not saying that it doesn't, but it's also a different operation. So with that, we comply with all your regulations. We haven't asked for any waivers. We haven't asked for any special dispensation other than the variance that was granted by the Board of Appeals. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody else want to speak on behalf of the applicant before I turn it over? Okay. Hearing none from the applicant up at this point in time. Anybody here like to speak in favor of this project? If you want to speak in favor, just come to the microphone, please. Give us your name and address, please, for the record.
Could I just interject? If you
Raymond
could,
Barassa from 18 Rita Street.
excuse me, could you sign in too for me, please, just for the record? That'd be great.
There should be a sign-in sheet that we could have it for our notes. Thank you. Okay, yeah, okay. Thank you, sir.
I'm in favor of the project. My main concern is about the storage plans. You're gonna have forced pumping. You're gonna have a forced pumping station, or each house that want to connect to it have its own pump.
No. We'll listen to him, then we'll get back to you. This isn't a question
And
and answer period.
also, and
Okay?
al-
Under the regulations here, just to let you know what happens is, everybody states their case, then we make a decision, it's not open to a debate, stuff like that, so if this gentleman has a question to the board, we will address that question to the applicant. Thank you.
and also, if each house that wants to connect to that forced pumping, do they pay for the electricity for that pump?
I would imagine that'd be on the homeowner.
Or is there gonna be one single pump station?
Okay, anything else, sir?
That's about all I have.
Okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. Anybody else like to speak in favor?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board, my name is Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. And I've attended the ZBA meetings and the Conservation Commission meetings when particularly when this project has been talked about, and I support it. I think it'll be a great project for the city of Lowell. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Anybody else like to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anybody like to speak in opposition? Just come to the microphone, please, and state your name and address.
My name is Dorothy Bickling, and I live at 19 Patriot Way. This project, if you will look at the corner of the project, it backs into my property. The community in which I live is 5 years old. When I purchased my lot 5 years ago, I really had the choice of buying any lot in this development. At that time, there was only 2 model homes available. At the time I chose to purchase this lot, I was told that it was backed by wetlands, and it was clear as I walked the property that it was indeed wetlands. I was given the idea that that was not property that could be built. Now I find that the entire back of my property, the vision of all 8 houses on my street, as well as the front vision of my neighbors across the street, is going to be impacted by this project. Just so that you know who I am, I have served on the board of Lowell Parks and Conservation for a number of years. That organization and its director, Jane Calvin, are known in the city for planting trees and to keep this city green. So indeed, I find it somewhat ironic that I'm needing to come to you to give a voice to all of the trees in this project. These trees form a curtain all the way along this property, and I indeed will be disturbed. My property will be less valuable if these trees are taken down. I don't want to be home when the saws are making the noise to cut these trees down. You need to understand the impact of this project on a housing project of very new and very nice homes that was built just 5 years ago. And that's a community of 20 homes that are adding a great deal to the tax base of this city. Furthermore, I would assume, but I don't see anyone here from Lowell General. There should be people from Lowell General speaking of concern about the development of this property. This property is in the access lane of the helicopters that land at Lowell General. Now, I don't know how many of you have had the grave opportunity of hearing helicopters land at various times, but realize that when helicopters come over this property, you're having 5 more residences subject to possible damages from helicopters arriving. So I don't know what you think of my concern, but realize my concerns are grave. Had I known of this, do you think I would have purchased this property 5 years ago? Do you think I would have spent the time and energy to build a house if I knew that this was going to be my vision in my backyard? I hope that the developer here, if they expect to turn back this conservation land to the city, will be providing some endowment to the city for the preservation of the land that they're turning back into conservation. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else like to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. Just come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, if you would, please.
My name is Tom Propelka. I live at 17 Jeanne d'Arc Street. No offense against the builders, it's a nice plan, but we're primarily a retired neighborhood. And I could see increased traffic now with 5 houses, 10, 12, 15 more cars going up that road, which is narrow, exiting Mammoth Road, causing more traffic to get in and out of there. It's hard to get out of Columbia Road to Mammoth Road as it is. And I didn't get a notice for this meeting. I found out from my neighbor. I also didn't get a notice for the last 2 meetings. I am in a butter. I've been here for about 40 years. And 40 years ago, I tried to buy this land in the back. I said, I want about another 100 feet. They told me it was wetlands. You can't buy that. I says, well, okay. I'll try to build a house on what I already have, which I think I have enough. If I have to get a variance or whatever, I don't know. What else did I have here? She's right about the helicopter pad. They go over my house, my willow tree goes like this. It scares the hell out of me. Excuse my French, Polish, whatever. They're going to be landing right by that house right there. Their pad's going to be 20 yards away from that house. Now, does Lowell General want to move their helicopter pad? I don't know. We got 4 deer in there, 12 turkeys, 2 red fox. The trees are loaded with red-tailed hawks. I mean, it's a shame to see this. You know, I said nothing against the builders, but it's a beautiful retirement area. I don't have to look at the Lowell General parking lot because of all these beautiful trees she spoke about. And when the chainsaw starts cutting them down, it's going to look horrible. It's a beautiful place. If any of you gentlemen been out there, go take a look. Yeah, the plan is nice too. The storage that Ray wants is good. What about the wildlife and the trees and my buffer zone? Am I going to be looking at the Lowell General parking lot? I don't know. It's a nice plan, but I have to say for the record, I'm against it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Nancy Renault. I actually have property that has frontage on Jeanne d'Arc Street and Rita Street. Lucky. And I don't know if I'm for or against, so I'm not sure if there's a third category I should have waited for, but the first thing that I wanted to comment on is that I guess there was some Conservation Commission meeting, which I've talked to a few people who are here that I knew nothing about. Was that a closed meeting, or we shouldn't have been invited anyway, or?
That's up to the Conservation Board. We have no control of that board. What the applicant said before was that they had a public hearing that was done at the Conservation Board, and that was approved by them. Also, Attorney Leidy's indicated that they had a public hearing done at the Zoning Board of Appeals. So what happened at that board, it was advertised in the local newspaper, because I read it myself, and I saw it in there. But what they did at that hearing, we have no privy to, and we have no comment on that. But
Okay, so I can find out through them. Good.
Okay.
The second thing is the present end of Jeanne d'Arc Street right now. If you look at it, the dark green area, I guess I'm not sure what that represents. Yes. Sorry. I'm used to a two big thing. Sorry. But I'm concerned about whether or not that is part of the house owner, the dwelling that's at the very end of that corner. Because if it is, any trees taken down, anything that happens in that area will certainly be a huge impact on our view and what we see right now. Right now, as my neighbor said, it's beautiful. There are trees, there are birds, everything that you could want is there. You can't believe you're in Lowell. So that's a concern for me. What about the sewage plan? I'm not sure. I've heard some things about, pump station, individual pumping. Since I have property that also, the frontage is on Rita Street, I don't know what that means to me. I've heard that the width of Rita Street will stay the same at 40 feet. I wanted to make sure that's true. Again, the same issues about Lowell General Hospital, the view of the parking lot, the landing pad, all of that is also an issue for me. You talked about preparing or repairing the entire street. I don't know what that means, but there was also a mention about 40-foot transition area, which I assume is New Street meeting Old Street, and I don't know what that means either. Are we talking about some kind of lump, some burn, something? I'm not sure what that means. The other thing also is that if this is to go forward, I have a few questions about the time frame. What's the expected start? What's the expected completion? What's going to happen with all of the equipment, earth moving, I'm sure logging equipment, you name it. All of that stuff is going to have to go somewhere. I assume it's going down Rita Street. What does that mean to everyone? I've heard a lot about ledge being, and I'm not sure if it's part of this, but the area has been known to have a lot of ledge. Will there be blasting? Are there hours of operation that have been identified so that we understand, are you working weekends? Are you working at, I think it's fair to ask these questions to know. And the last thing for me is that you talked about an association, which I think is a great idea. What I would suggest or recommend is that someone representing the neighborhood be part of that association so that we're all on the same page. If we do go forward, we're all on the same page and the communication is not based upon whether we get something in the mail or not, so that, everyone has their say at the time of the meetings that they have. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Let me see if I can just back up and answer a couple of the concerns that Mr. Nowd had. One would be the homeowners association is indicated. That would be for the people who buy the 5 lots to maintain the stormwater system. So that would be a system that those 5 people would have to put in money to create the homeowners association to make sure that stormwater system is approved and maintained, and that would be supervised by the city of Lowell through our inspectional services. The question of the width of Rita Street, for the new developers, in order for them to put the extension in, the city criteria to come before this board is they need 45-foot width for the street. The street now is 40, so they don't have to touch that street, and actually it's, if you drive down here like I have, if you look at it, it even looks narrower than 40 feet. Because what happens is, without any curbing and out any sidewalk, the houses on that lot get grown in a bit. So basically, they have to go 45 feet to meet the requirements by the city boards and regulations. So what the applicant said, what he's gonna do is, if you could bear with me, come down one side, that will stay the same, and then to pick up the other one, he has to jet out there approximately 5 feet to make it the 45 feet width way. I think there was one other thing, and then I'm gonna ask the comment on. Getting back to that, I'll ask, could you comment basically on the sewage and the pump station for us? Because that was two concerns of two of the neighbors, if you would, please.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. As Mr. Barassa said, we are providing a small diameter, low pressure, low velocity sewer main to pump up onto Columbia Road. And what the proposal is that that sewer main is sized, first of all, it's sized specifically small because it's low velocity, low pressure. But it will be allowed, and there'll be stubs put for all the properties to tie in. Those are not simple stubs because they have to have backflow prevention devices and sealed caps because it's under pressure. But that'll be done. So all that the homeowners would have to do is to tie into that. Now, he's right, they have to tie into that with their own pumps because everybody's going to have their own individual pumps. And those pumps are to be paid for by themselves if they want to tie in.
And that's an option they will have, whether to tie in or not.
That's an option. They don't have to, obviously. They could continue to be on septic, but it provides for them the option. And they don't have to build the pipe and get the pipe inspected by the city and so forth. All they have to do is just connect to the pipe that's right in front. But they would have to pay for the the monthly electricity for that pump too. These pumps are not like the pumps that you're thinking about. The actual unit itself is in a 4-foot diameter by about, I think it's 8 feet tall, but it goes into the ground, all but the last 8 inches or so. So all you see in the ground is just a 4-foot green cover, which you landscape around. If you open that cover and saw it, it's sort of a vertical pump, looks like an elaborate well pump. And it's a very low velocity, low pressure pump, so it's not a loud pump. It's about if you listen to it, it's about the sound of an old dishwasher. So it's not like a large pump that turns on. They have these, you could put them inside the house as well, in the basement, and they sound just like a dishwasher when it goes on. And it only goes on for periods of seconds, 30, 60 seconds, and then it goes off for 10 or 15 minutes until the flow generates enough, and so forth. So they're not really an impediment for living, whether they be inside the house or outside the house. And they don't take a lot of power, because just like a dishwasher doesn't take much power and so forth. I think that's it on the sewer one. I can answer some others if you want.
What about the ledge, if you could?
The ledge, you said?
Yeah, the young lady indicated that there's some talk that there might be some ledge.
We haven't seen any
Whether they have to do any
indication of
blasting
ledge
on
at
the
all.
ledge.
Yeah, we haven't seen any indication of ledge. The good thing, if there is any ledge, there are strict regulations, both by various state boards, that they have to do it, as well as all blasting companies are required to be, through the fire department, to go and inspect all kinds of properties and so forth. There are state regulations. But we don't have any ledge. We did soil tests, like I said, here and here. We never found any. And actually, most of the site is in a fill situation anyway. As the road comes down, we're filling a lot of these houses. The front yards get filled, the backyards and so forth. So we're not expecting a large amount of cuts at all, and there is more fills than anything else.
The other question is, in regards to some of the wetlands, the property now is owned by the city of Lowell. So obviously, the other part that you do not use, as indicated, will remain with the city. So it's not like you're getting it from the city, giving them back on endowment, going back to them, it just stays with the city of Lowell, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, Mrs. Bickling's house is here, directly on her entire property line will still be owned by the city. Mr. Bickling was the one that mentioned that she worked on the Lowell Park Recreation. So her line is still owned by the city, and you can see this triangle that forms. That is city-owned land that will, obviously we can't touch it because we're not going to be owning it. Then on the property, this is exactly where Aaron has asked us to increase the tree buffer. Perhaps you knew something, I don't know. But that buffer will be even increased from what we show on the plan.
So you're going to try to keep as many trees and make the buffer for the tree line as large as possible?
Exactly. The other, if I can, what the green area here
Sure,
is.
if you could.
John Dock Street ends here. This portion is on Lot 5. It's not being proposed to be developed. It is treed. It is within the 100-foot setback of the wetland, so any trees that were to be cut in here need to get permission from the Conservation Commission. And to add to that, the reason why you may not have been notified is, and you may want to pay attention because to this property owner, Conservation only has to notify those properties that touch the work that's being performed. You have to notify within 100 feet, and the Board of Appeals has to notify within 300 feet. So there are different notification requirements. And there are several properties between this property and her property, and that's why she wasn't notified.
And getting back to, they talked about the Rita Street, obviously, you're going to pay the extension. What happens if the street weight is now to be paved, that'd be something that the city of Lowell does at a future date if they want to maintain that road or put any development up further for the sidewalks that you discussed earlier.
That's correct.
So that'd be something done by the city of Lowell.
Correct.
Okay.
But we're going to pave it when we're done with the utility construction. We are paving
So
the
you're willing to
full
pave
width.
it on behalf of the city?
Correct.
Okay.
This transition zone was to accommodate what she had mentioned was she didn't know if there was going to be a bump at the end of Rita Street. If we didn't build this transition, there would be. We got to go a portion onto the existing Rita Street and do a full reconstruction of that portion so that there is a transition.
Thank you, sir. Since I've asked quite a few questions, any of the board members at this time have any questions or concerns?
I have just a
Yes,
couple.
Mr. Lockhart.
Can you locate the helipad for Lowell General Hospital? on
You know
your
what? I
plan?
don't know where it is. I don't know if you know George.
Somebody
I'm guessing by what
mentioned
she
it
was
like
talking
20
about that it
yards
must
from
be
a
right
house.
about here, but this is all wetlands, so
Yeah.
I don't have an aerial. I could probably dig one out on my.
Back to the right is the best I can
So
say.
it's
Somewhere
not
over
in the
here.
immediate vicinity of that development.
Right.
No, he said 40 yards or so. This is a lot of wetlands here. I've stood here and I didn't
Seems to
see
me it
it.
would be further away, too. All right. Is there an issue with street trees? On
No.
Aaron's memo here, there was,
No, we're showing street trees in the planting zone. He just said that there should be a planting strip between the edge of the
Yeah.
travel way and the sidewalk. We concur.
so they are being provided.
Yep.
Okay, that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Mr. Fischett?
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Couple things. First of all, regarding the grinder pumps, or the sewer pumps. I know, matter of fact, I spoke to Aaron this afternoon and getting a clarification with engineering. I thought it was important, at least, and it was a legitimate question. I think it's providing the service by extending the storage, but I wanted to make sure that the abutters were very much aware that there was a pump involved, and there is expense to that, and there is maintenance as well. And then my concern as well is that there was not going to be a pump station because, the background as to why this is being disposed of by the city of Lowell is to help generate tax dollars. I hate to see the city take on liability and the cost of a pump station. So those were concerns that I had relative to not having a gravity-fed system on that site. I will say the variance that was granted for that lot is probably one of the, in my opinion, one of the few times it's the true definition of a hardship as it's associated with the lot. So I thought that was certainly appropriate at that time. And I know you've received orders of conditions from conservation, and this is usually a conservation condition, and perhaps they did issue that, but on lot number 5, you mentioned the area that's in the buffer zone that would limit the ability of the homeowner to go and cut down trees without going to conservation. If we get to the practical side of life, what happens is the person that buys that, whether there's orders of conditions on a Saturday, they're going to be the landscape warrior and go out there and they're still going to cut trees anyways. Just curious if you would be amenable to putting at least some sort of a conservation marker, or did they require that?
They did require that on both lots 5 and 4. Along the edge of the work, we're to build a permanent structure like a wall, a
Okay.
rock wall of some sort. And then at the certain points, they make us put markers where the limit of
So
work.
that way there, somebody that buys it would be on notice that anything beyond that is conservation. That's so crucial. That is very crucial. Because even if there's restrictions out there and they're recorded, most people don't know what the orders of conditions are. The perpetual orders of conditions regarding fertilizer and everything else, that's, it's nice on paper, but practical application, it just doesn't happen. Also, regarding the vertical granite curbing, I think that's, I like that, the bituminous walk, I think, is appropriate, and I think I did speak to Aaron on that. I think it's more pliable with relatives to the trees that may be planted and the growth, and I think that makes a lot of sense over there. Regarding the condo association, I do have some concerns about this. I have experienced this in the past, and I appreciate the efforts to make sure that it's in place beforehand. What I don't want to see is to have these homes marketed with people purchasing the homes and not realizing that there is an association that goes along with this. Because I understand if you develop the association prior to releasing lots, well, prior to releasing lots and looking for the city to release the lots, you've already put the road in, you've already got homes in, and your real estate agent is marketing the homes. And we run into situations in the past where people are calling up, you go into multiple listings and there's no mention of a association, and the homeowners purchased the property really without knowing that. And I just want to make sure that if we could make that a condition, so that I just want to make sure that that's.
May I respond? Mr.
Yes, you can.
That's a good point, because Mr. Chasey already, that question came up at the Conservation Commission or whatever, and Mr. Chasey made it very clear that this is something that they always make clear to any of the purchasers of their property. It will, of course, be on record, but as you well know, everyone who buys a house doesn't go and do a title exam first.
That's correct.
I can, rest assured, and you could put a condition in there that any to the extent that we can manage that, any broker involved in the showing it, or let's put it this way, that we'll use our best efforts to make sure that everyone is aware of it prior to the closing of the property. That's for sure. And I did want to make a comment, if I could, about the sewer situation. Nobody's being forced, when we're talking about these other three folks here, no one's being forced to go into the sewer, but any of those of us who know what it's like to live on a septic system, or how people deal with septic system and the cost of upkeep and pumping and damages and getting Title V reports before you sell it and whatever, when you talk about the cost of running electricity on a pump is minuscule compared to what those expenses are, and I just wanted to make that clear. And then if I can, I don't want to take all your time, Mr. Bichette, but I promised Mr. Popolko, I think the name is back here, that I would ask he wanted to know the distance that his house is set back, the last house there is set back from his street. From Jean d'Arc Street?
From John Dock Street, it's about 100 feet, but from the edge of the property line, which is actually next to Mr. Cushion's house, is about 30 feet.
How much?
30.
About 30 feet.
That's from Mr. Cushion's house.
That's from Mr. Cushion's house.
From Mr. Cushion's house is 30 feet.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
He's saying it's 30 feet from Mr. Cushion's house.
I'm sorry, not even the
Mr. Cushion's
house.
house would be the closest to the site.
Let me go back.
Okay.
Mr. Cushion's property line.
Mr. Cushion's property line, I'm sorry.
And the house is more like 70 feet.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's about
From the property line.
House to house would be 70 feet.
Okay, right, okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to get back to Mr.
I'm sorry,
Fischette. Go ahead, Mr. Fischette, go ahead, please.
Thank you.
I stole some of your time, Mr. Fischette.
That's quite
I
right.
apologize.
I can take as much time as I'd like, actually. Yes,
That's
unless
right.
Mr. Chairman cuts me off here. But just, and actually, I just want to wrap it up for my thoughts and concerns on this. I think you've done a good job addressing a lot of the concerns, and I certainly can appreciate the sentiments regarding purchasing land and being told that it's conservation and it can't be built, and I've seen that happen many times before. I will say that at least I think some appropriate steps have been taken where you've got that sliver of property behind the other abutting homes that will still remain conservation land, as well as trying to maximize the tree lines. I think that's being very proactive in trying to buffer that from the existing neighborhood. I think it meets all the requirements of subdivision control, and like I said, the concerns that I had were at least having the individuals that live on Rita Street that will have access to storage. And I think I started by saying that's a good thing, and I don't even know if those properties would perk if you had to but you know, having said that, again, the access will be there, but it does require a pump. It's not just a matter of a hookup. So, and I think that's important for them to understand that. But that's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fischett. Mr. Genman, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I had to step out for a brief minute. Did you address the questions that Mr. Barassa had about the pump station? And
Yes, I did.
you did? Okay.
You want me to read?
Yeah, just quickly, if you could
Yes, it's essentially, we are providing a sewer line, a small, low-velocity, low-pressure line with appropriate backflow preventers and caps to allow him to just tie in. So it's a very easy tie-in, but as Mr. Fischett said, to tie in, because we're going uphill, he would have to build or construct one of these low-velocity pumps. They run about $4,000 for the pump itself, and then you have to have an electrician to put it in and someone to put it in the ground. So the whole thing is about $5,000. So they're not like a pump that you may be thinking like a city pump. It's
Right.
$100,000. It's not like that. It's a very large and expensive appliance, so to speak. And it doesn't run that much electricity either. It's a very low voltage, low flow, low velocity system.
Okay. So for about the cost of $5,000, you could connect to the city sewer and water system.
Certainly cheaper than it would be for a new septic system.
Right. Okay. Let's see. I'm curious about the status of the remaining land, the land that's not being proposed to build on, the conservation land. That's going to be city-owned still, correct?
Yes, I'm Larry Bevere from Division of Planning and Development. Yes, we're not selling that portion of the land. We're going to retain it. It's going to come out. It's going to be removed from the portion that's going to be sold. So.
Okay. And is it the city's intention to market it, to try and sell it?
The conservation land?
Yeah.
No.
So is there some sort of guarantee that that land will not be sold in the future? It will be maintained as conservation land?
Right now, we're looking into putting together a vote for the city council for them to declare it conservation land.
Okay. All right. So I think I can certainly appreciate the concerns of the residents who have purchased property there and are concerned about what this is going to do to their view, what it's going to do to their traffic and everything else. But this is buildable land. You know, people can build here. And I think you have to think about what do we want there, as opposed to how can we stop this? Because I think that we have to go by certain guidelines, you know, as to what we can approve and not approve, and we can't just disapprove of something for the sake of disapproving of it. And if something meets the guidelines and is well done, you know, it's we need to approve that. And you know, in this case, we're looking at, you know, this is the total property here is 300 something thousand acres. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't read anything anymore. But it's over 300,000 square feet. So, you know, if my math is right, this is in the traditional single-family zone, which means you could build a house on a 7,000 square foot lot on this land, which again means you could have over 40 houses on this property if it was maximized, if somebody took it and maximized the amount of houses you could get on there. And even on the section here, the 115,000 square foot section that is being purchased by these gentlemen, they could get 16 houses on that lot. And what they proposed is 5, and taking the remaining, you know, 100 and something thousand square feet of land and making it conservation land. And this gentleman just told us that a vote is going to come before the city council to protect that land and keep it conservation land forever. So I think your emphasis should be put behind that vote, making sure that this remaining large majority of the land is going to remain conservation land, so that it will protect all the things you love about this area as much as possible. Because the 5 houses here, the smallest lot is 12,000 square feet. Again, remember, they can go as low as 7, and the biggest one is 28,000 square feet. So honestly, as developments go, it's a pretty good development. You know, they've agreed to all the criteria. They're putting sidewalks all the way around. They're bringing the sewer line down. They're even carving off a piece of their property to allow one of the abutters to use their shed. I think it's a pretty good development, but I definitely can feel for your concern. But I still think by you may perhaps monitoring this association and getting behind the effort to make this conservation land something that can't be changed would be a good effort for you. One of the questions that was brought up was about building the obvious turmoil that's going to be caused here when the trees start coming down and the buildings start going up. Are there some restrictions about time of day that the property can be worked on and that sort of thing? Is there? I missed that. I'm sorry, Mr. Elides, you need to pay attention. There's a meeting going on.
I know,
over
Mr.
here.
O'Brien, the former city engineer with whom I went
That's okay.
from grade school through Lowell High
That's
School.
okay. You don't have to explain.
It was
So,
sort of like
my-
a reunion, and so I'm sorry about that.
My question is.
If you start again, Mr. Gentleman, I'll
Sure.
try to answer.
Are there restrictions under which the builders will operate, regarding time of day, that they'll be cutting down trees and building properties and that sort of thing?
I'll ask Mr. Chasey because this is their operating procedure, as I say, and I think he can give you a pretty good outline.
Good evening. My name's Dan Chasey, President of Loon Hill Development. Provided things go forward as we hope, and a closing is able to take place at the end of this month, we would hope to begin construction in July. We would hope to have road construction completed by the end of August, and house construction start mid-August, early September, and hopefully, it depends on the market. The market is going to determine how fast and quick we can move forward with this. I'd love to be done by November. I can't guarantee that's going to happen. I can honestly see us working through the winter. As far as hours of operation, a standard work day, 7 to 5 o'clock. People start at different times, Monday through Friday. Saturday, we like to work. Saturday, most people do work Saturdays, 7 to 5. So that is our expectation at this point. And that's how we intend to move forward right now.
So there'll be no construction going on in the very early morning hours,
No.
5, 6 o'clock in the morning, or, much beyond 5 o'clock in the evening.
No. Legally, I don't think we could even start making
I'm not
noise at
sure what
6
the law
a.m.
is on that,
I
but-
wouldn't want someone if I was living there. So.
Right. Okay, thank you. I had a couple of other questions. So you addressed all the planning board issues. You are going to do the sidewalks, the trees. You're going to street trees, and you're going to maintain the 50-foot buffer so that there's more trees on the property.
Down on lot 3,
Okay. And you're going to address the curb cuts.
on the 2 lots that need adjustments, correct.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Genman. Mr. Claremont?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, I think we did touch on most of the questions before the board, but just with regard to the homeowners association, that's going to be primarily, as I understand it, to maintain the stormwater system. Can you describe what's involved in maintenance of that system?
While he's looking, can I respond to this woman's concern about membership in the association? As I'm sure you know, unfortunately, associations like that are comprised only of the homeowners themselves. And I think you don't want to be a member because once you're a member, you're required to pay some of the monies that they're required to pay. Yeah, well, it's sort of like that, more like that kind of an association.
As mentioned in Lisa DeMayo, city engineer's report, we provided to them a copy of the operation and maintenance report, which is a separate document. We found that when we included them in the drainage report, they get lost because they're not a separate document. So we've separated them out in our offices and made it a separate document so that now it can get distributed to the people that, without having the whole drainage report, which is oftentimes very, very thick. So this is it. It's thin because it's just the O&M report. There are several components in this system, 3 essentially. The deep sump catch basins that catch it, semi-annually they need inspection, and 4 times a year they need to be cleaned out. That's similar to what the city does with their catch basins anyway. and then disposed of properly.
And
under state
they
law.
would hire someone privately to do that
Exactly.
work,
And
basically.
there's only 2 of them, and it goes pretty quickly. The infiltration basin and the sediment forebay are the only 2 items that remain. And again, they get inspected semi-annually, spring and fall. On the infiltration basin, if there's sediments on either of them, if there are sediments at a certain depth, 4 to 6 inches, then it needs to be removed. So oftentimes the forebay, there will be sediment, and that's, we're talking shovels at that point. We're not even talking a backhoe or anything like that. It's shovels, wheelbarrow, dig out the little bit that's settled in, and that's it. But that's twice a year inspection and then removed when necessary, and then twice a year mowing. That's really the way the worst part comes for cities and towns, because it's not a big deal to go out there with a weed whacker and mow it if you live in the area. But if the city's got 75 of these to do all over the city, it becomes a big job just to go out there and mow these things. And they're not always, they're weed whack mowing. They're not always like a big lawn and flat and easy to mow. So they need different type of equipment. Generally, weed whacks is fine. If you don't do that, after 2 or 3 or 4 years, you know what happens. All of a sudden, small root trees start to develop, and the thing becomes really onerous after 10 or 15 years to go in there and clean it up. So it's just, if somebody goes out there and they'll hire someone to weed whack it and clean it up, and weeds are fine. These basins don't require grass like you're thinking, the bluegrass, and the weeds are actually, there are some weeds that are better for filtration. So just because there are weeds growing in there, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. There are some pretty weeds and some ugly weeds, but just to cut them down so that it doesn't let the trees develop. That's the hardest part of the maintenance, and it's really very simple if it's done every year.
And I presume that, the issue was raised as to whether a potential buyer is going to be aware that they're part of this homeowners association, but I presume they're all going to be responsible for a portion of the cost. There's going to be dues involved, similar to condo fees, and when they close on the property, they'll become aware of the fact that they've got to pay some expense to that. So I think that
Because they're going to hire it out to a
they'll all be
subcontractor.
aware in that
Yeah,
regard.
and they'll be given estimates, et cetera. and-
All right, I have no other questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clement. Aaron, do you have any comments or anything you'd like to address? I know it sounds like they tried to address most everything in your letter, and I know they didn't want to steal all your thunder, so I'm going to give you a chance to reply to anything that, with the conversation that
I think
the applicant
Mr.
had.
Brem already took my thunder.
Okay,
Really,
sorry.
they addressed the main concerns that we had, and I think with the engineering department, they really were pretty accepting of the sewage system, the water system, and particularly the stormwater, which is really what the city engineer looks at. So, comfortable with how it's moving forward.
Okay, thank you. So basically, by looking over the report, and as indicated, when we do get a copy of the plans, have to go to Conservation, Engineering Department, the Fire Department, the Board of Health, Traffic Engineer, Wastewater, and Water Utilities. And as a result of that, you've met all their criteria, so you have met all the requirements under the subdivision regulations.
We have, you'll probably want to add a few conditions to
understand
make sure
that.
that the plans
Right.
accommodate those comments.
Right,
and
the ones
we're
that
okay
they
with
brought
that.
up earlier, and a couple of conditions went to homeowners as well.
Correct.
At this point in time, any further board members have any further discussion? If not, we can entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the subdivision. I've written down a few of the conditions, and certainly someone can fill in the blanks if I've left any out. But parcel Z, as shown on the plan, will remain with the city of Lowell for the conservation purposes. Parcel X, as shown on the plan, is going to be conveyed to the neighbor to resolve the encroachment issue. There'll be a homeowners association to maintain the stormwater system, and I believe that the contact information's got to be provided to the city with that. The developer will minimize the tree removal, and the final plans will be reviewed and approved by DPD. And it'll be a bituminous sidewalk with vertical granite curbing for the entire project. And those are the conditions I'm suggesting.
Any further discussion from board members?
I have, I think, one additional, fire department approval for the turnaround radius there. I don't think you have that yet, do you?
They indicated that as long, the fire department approval check, as long as the cul-de-sac is large enough to accommodate the fire engine turnaround. I think the applicant said that they met the requirements for the turnaround.
All right, you have met that.
It said in his letter
Said
for an engine.
turnaround.
Engine turnaround.
Right.
And that's
To
sufficient.
accommodate an engine, right, a fire engine turnaround. Right. And that's what you have for that cul-de-sac?
Yeah, we have the requirements of the city engineers, and they've done that when they did the requirements for the roadways.
Okay.
Strike that.
Okay. Any further discussion of the board members? Hearing none, a motion's been made.
I'll second the motion.
And second, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes yes. The matter has been approved, 5 in favor and none against. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your input.
Thank you very much.
The next matter on the agenda is 1141 Bridge Street, which is a zoning change. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, the Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an ordinance to amend the Code of Zoning ordinance. Excuse me? Excuse me, please? Can you take the discussion outside so we can address the next matter, please? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. In accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 5, the Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinance, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Appendix A, therefore entitled Zoning. The amendment would extend the traditional mixed-use zoning district to include the back portion of 1141 Bridge Street. For a zoning change, that this matter comes before us first, and we make a recommendation, and then from here, the matter has to go before the city council, and the city council has the ultimate vote whether to approve the zoning change or not. And it's procedural-wise, through our zoning, it's here tonight before us for recommendation only. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, James Flood, 81 Bridge Street, Lowell, representing Mr. and Mrs. Meng Ang, who were the owners of the property at 1141 Bridge Street. At the present time, as you can see from the plan, the property has a split zone. Portion on Bridge Street is TMU, and this small piece that we're asking for the rezoning, consisting of approximately 4,752 square feet, is a TSF zone. I think you people are probably familiar with the property. It's located directly adjacent to the Demoulas Bridge Street Shopping Center. There's an existing large pink building there that used to be the Town Crier Antique Shop. If this is allowed, it would be the intention of my client to demolish the existing building and construct a retail professional office building on the site. This, of course, would be subject to coming back before your board for site plan approval for a final okay of this development. But it's the intention to make it available for doctors, lawyers, accountants, professional people, no restaurants. And in order to do that, and in order to make a decent building, it's necessary to provide for parking on this additional piece on the side. The only thing that would be on that section that is presently zoned TSF would be the parking, some landscaping, and a dumpster. I did not see the press conference today, but evidently Mr. Demoulas came in and has proposed a whole new development of the shopping center on the adjacent to this property. So I think with this improvement and with the improvement of the shopping center, this will be very beneficial to the neighborhood. We did present this plan to the neighborhood, and I think there's a representative of the neighborhood here that will speak on it. But I think it's much better than the large pink building that's there, and the only thing it will be used for is parking, that section. So.
Thank you, Councilor. Anybody else like to speak on behalf of or in favor of the project?
My name is Roland Roy. I live on Willard Street. I'm in a butter to this piece of property. I'm very concerned about it, of course. He said he contacted the neighbors, but I never was contacted. When did you contact the neighbors?
I said Met with the neighborhood association, and she's here.
Oh, well, I'm a neighbor, I'm an abutter to this thing here. I'm very concerned about it. Why is it that there was change to half for a building in the front on Willard Street and then half for business use? It was just changed a few years ago.
I don't know, sir. I'm basically, he's coming in to ask that the city council consider changing the zone.
It has been changed.
I know, but they have a right as an applicant to request that a zone be changed at any point in time, and it's the ultimate wisdom of the city council.
How much land is going to be left for a house in the front on Bridge Street, on the Willard Street?
If you would, Mr. Flood.
7,000 square feet.
Is that enough to build a decent house?
Yeah.
Well,
What was the answer, 7,000?
7,000
Okay,
square feet.
thank you.
7,059 square feet.
Okay.
Well, I'm very concerned about that. That was my question. I didn't know if I didn't think there would be enough land to put a decent house there. 7,000 is, I think it's a small lot.
That's what's required in
That,
zoning.
in that zone, sir, that's what is required. So if he has over 7,000, but that's what required by the city zoning.
Well, and is that a sure thing that there'd be an office building?
That's what we're proposing. Yeah. And
What would
that-
happen, sir, is if he comes before us, we either vote to extend the zone or deny the extension of the zone. And then from here, it goes to the city council. Our recommendation has no bearing on what they do. If they allow the zone change, then he has to come back before this board for what they call the site plan approval. And at that point in time, he would have to do what the other gentleman had to do a little while ago, was come in with the plan, give it to all the city departments, all 6 city departments, that all comment on those matters, and we'd have a public hearing back here again. So for him to get this approved, it doesn't matter what we do, it matters what the city council does. If it gets to the zoning, if they don't allow the zoning, then it does not come back to us for the site plan approval as it stands. If they do allow the zoning, then you'd have to come back and you'd have to get the approval of this for the site plan. So for this to happen, what he's requesting, he needs a recommendation for us, either for or against, which doesn't hold him up. Then he goes to city council, and if they approve it, then he comes back to site plan. If they deny it, then they can build what they have on there now by right, but it has to go along with what the existing zoning is now. What he has is 2 types of zone on that lot. And a lot of times when it comes in, when there's 2 types of the zone, as the board, we always impose, well, most of the time, we try to impose the most restrictive, so it doesn't affect the neighborhood. And that was, I think, when they looked at this project, they looked at what could be the most restrictive, and their concerns was, well, how can we put in the office park or development, and therefore the only way they could do that is to change the zone. So basically, that is what they're requesting by way of our vote, then to city council, and then back.
When is that supposed to be done?
When would the meeting go before the city council? Would you know yet, Mr.
Well,
Flood?
I mean, depending on your vote, then it'd be submitted to the city,
Right.
and it'd probably be another,
Right.
they're only meeting twice a month now, so it'll
Yeah.
probably
So
be
it
in
ha-
July. And then if that's successful, then we'd have to come back here. I think, Mr. Roy, I'd have a real problem coming back and changing what I said was going to be here at a later date. I said it's going to be a professional building, and that's what's proposed.
Is that a 2-story building?
It's a single-story building. Well, no, I guess there is an upstairs on it, too. Yeah, there is an upstairs on it. But
How many offices do you propose?
proposing 3 right now.
Oh, 3. That's it.
That would come back before us on site plan.
But that
That'd be
will
the-
come back.
That'd be the issue on site plan. At this point in time, he doesn't have to give us those specifications. We only agree whether the zone should be changed or not. When he comes back later, then we'd have to look at the frontage, the rear yard, the front yard, the parking, the landscaping, the lighting plan, the drainage plan. That would have to come back at a future date
Well,
at a future hearing.
that's what I'd be
Yeah.
concerned about.
That's what would have to come
Actually,
back.
I would like to see that lot developed anyway,
Right.
because it's a piece of
Yeah.
junk now.
It is. I mean, I was up there the other day and the place is just falling down.
And
I mean, the
I'd like
windows
to,
are broken.
I own some of the land on the edge still, but I would take care of it if that was, if something was put up there.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's an eyesore now. I do agree with you.
So that's what I'm concerned about.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Because I know Demoulas is putting up a big
I don't,
That's great.
big center that they're changing over. I've spoken to them already.
okay.
And I hope that if something goes in there, that would be well taken care of as far as the boundaries and everything else.
Well, I think that this board is pretty, you know, they protect the neighborhood with screening. You know, there'd be trees
Yeah,
proposed, so it'd be
yeah,
all
yeah.
blocked. But I think in order to put in a decent building, well, a nice-looking building, we need that space for additional parking, and that's all that would be used for.
Well, that's all that's what I'm interested in anyway. I thought there'd be more people, abutters around, but nobody showed up but myself. But I'm the only one that's close to it anyway. I'm right there.
I'm sure if it comes back for site plan that you won't, you'll have plenty of company.
Well, that's all right.
You've always represented very well the neighborhood, and we always listen to their concerns.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak in favor of the project?
My name is Anne Marie Page, and I'm the president of the Centerville Neighborhood Action Group. We meet the third Monday of every month at 6:30, and we now meet at the McAuliffe School. And any neighbor is invited to come. Mr. Flood did come, and the architect, Mr. Jazokas, came. They made a presentation to the neighborhood group, showed them the plan. And when you look at it this way, we sort of tilt because we look at it the other way. Can Mr. Flood stand it up so you can see the Bridge Street on the bottom? Yep, stand it up. Okay, that's the way it's going to look. And today we were here at a press conference where Demoulas has made its presentation on the total renovation of that entire mall. And therefore, this is the icing on the cake. So everything up there will be brand new. The Demoulas complex will be brand new. This will be the icing on the cake on the very end of the building. That big ugly old building will be taken down. This professional building will go up. And it is no food, no garbage, just a nice professional building. And we are quite excited about it. And we have not received any calls or complaints from any neighbors. And you know we are very strict about zoning and planning. So this is a good project, and we support it, and we hope you do too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak in favor?
My name's Pat Hunt. I am a vice president of the Centerville Neighborhood Action Group, and I live on North Llewellyn Street in Centerville. I'm here to support this project. I think it's a great idea for the neighborhood because as you go up Bridge Street, it is getting very old and worn and torn, and new developments are welcome up there. Would like to see it used as long as there are no restaurants or McDonald's or Burger King, because we certainly have plenty of those around. And we do appreciate it, and we think it's going to be a nice project, and we will be keeping our eyes out on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, if you would, just sign in. That way we have a record for the meeting, and that way we'd have the minutes available if anybody likes to know what took place this evening. While you're doing that, I'll ask, anybody else you'd like to speak in favor of the project? In favor? Mark?
Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board, Mark Goldman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. I was going to wait until the project actually came before you for site plan review to speak on it. But
We welcome your input now, so we see you before we make our recommendation.
But no, it will be a good, very good project, and it will be something that also, and one thing that wasn't mentioned, the Centerville Master Plan. That it will incorporate with that. It fits in with that master plan. It fits in with the Lowell master plan itself and everything else that's happening in that area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none. Anybody like to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Hearing none. The public hearing is closed. One comment I have, I remember a while ago this project came before us, not for the zoning, but I think it was for something else, and I don't remember exactly what it was. I think they were going to change something, but I remember that building, I remember going out there and looked at it. It was a long time ago. I want to say Do you remember Miss Page a long time ago? They wanted to do something else to this building a while back. It was over 8, 10 years ago.
It's been a gift shop.
Right, because when it came in before, the gift shop was open. And I remember they came in for something, 'cause I remember when I was up there the other day looking at it, I remember being there before, and I remember... Okay, thank you, sir. I remember at one time, something did try to come up, and I want to say it was a while ago, and that's when the gift shop was still there. And then, obviously, when I looked at it, again, you could tell tonight, I mean, this week when I looked at it, that the property has really gone downhill. But before, when it came in, the town carrier gift shop was still open. They wanted to change something to it. I forget what it was. Okay, thank you. Okay. At this point in time, since the public hearing is closed, any of the planning board members have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Yes, Mr. Fischett.
I agree if there's something that's going to happen with this site that there needs to be, you need to incorporate that back lot, otherwise it's just not large enough to do anything that's going to work. It's also a key site because it really is a transition site from the mall, the auto-oriented type of businesses, getting more to the traditional neighborhood. And you're actually entering into a residential portion before you get back into the business district. So it's a very, I think it's a key site in that particular area. I will say, and to speak to that gentleman, and I have no doubt the sincerity of Counselor and his client that said this is the project they want to come back with, but it is a legitimate concern when you ever talk about a rezoning. And you have to really look at what can happen with the rezoning, even though there may be a project that's intended to come forward to the board, because once you've rezoned it, and the project may not come forward, and then something more invasive can happen. That's just a fact, and that's a legitimate concern, sir. I certainly can understand your thoughts on that. And certainly, we're not commenting on this particular project. I know looking at it, I have some things that concern me a little bit, and I think it definitely is on the right idea. And certainly, I'm sure the neighborhood group will be working with them closely. Having said that, I think that it's the only way something's going to happen with this site that's going to be worthwhile. I personally am aware of several people that have looked at this site over the years, trying to perhaps purchase it and look at some options. And you can't do anything that works really without incorporating that back site. So I think that's from a practical matter. So this is just my thoughts, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Jenner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I had the exact same thought that Mr. Frechette had, and that is that this project looks like it could be positive for the neighborhood, right? Gets rid of an eyesore, makes the transition, as Mr. Frechette was saying, but we're here voting on a zoning change. I'm generally very adverse to voting to extend business zones into neighborhoods. I think what happens when we do that, we slowly whittle away at our neighborhoods. And I have personally had experience with a situation where somebody came into the neighborhood, nothing to do with Mr. Flood or his clients. Somebody comes into the neighborhood, oh, we're going to put a nice, neighborhood-friendly business on this lot. We want to change the zone. The zone gets changed, and guess what happens? The neighborhood-friendly business goes out the window, and we end up with something that's not so neighborhood-friendly. And instead, it deteriorates the neighborhood. So I guess it's with great reluctance that I'll support this, because I do think the positives outweigh the negatives. But I am concerned about it. And I guess I'll ask Aaron, is there anything we can do? Can we make a conditional zoning change? Can we make a zoning change conditional upon the return of a retail and service only project?
No, a zone change is basically a zone change. There's not an opportunity to put a condition on it. The zoning district itself gives the guideline of what can go there. I would just say that the traditional mixed-use zone, there is a little bit more direction in creating something that would be appropriate next to a residential district. And getting back to a question as to why the zoning, there's a single-family and a commercial mixed-use zoning district splitting the site, is I believe that Along Willard, there's residential uses. This is the only property that has frontage on both streets. And to maintain kind of the business commercial feel on Bridge, the decision was to make that a mixed use, traditional mixed use zoning district, and then to maintain the back side of this as a single family use so that down the line, if something like this were to happen, there could be another. What happened on the Willard side of the street would maintain as a residential project, and what was on Bridge Street would be more likely to be a commercial project. You could still do residential in the TMU, but it would be more likely a commercial project. I don't know if that's more information you're looking for, but basically you can't really condition it, but the district itself, the guidelines that are in it, you'll have opportunity to make sure through site plan review that it adheres to a more kind of pedestrian
Fair enough.
environment.
I
Mr.
kind
Chairman,
of,
we've actually addressed that a couple times in the past. We've asked those questions over the year, and basically, we've been told we cannot put a condition on a recommendation for zoning change. I believe the most recent one we had was on Bridge Street, when they wanted to put the Dunkin' Donuts in with the drive-through. And basically, at the time, the question was, the Shell station there, they could put the Dunkin' Donuts in, but they couldn't get the drive-through in. And if we changed the zoning, they could have put a tavern in there, they could have put different real estate development in, and that was some of the concern. And I know the board here had a split vote, I think it was 3-2. It was recorded one way in the paper, but we voted another way, but said, me that as it is. And then it did not go before the city council thereafter. But we've asked over the years, can we conditionally put on a zone change? Well, we've been told that's above our authority. It's basically we either recommend yes or recommend no, but that has come up a couple times in the past. And for the same reason that you're addressing tonight, concerns that we've had, and saying, we want to come back this way. And then they said, well, you either voted or not, and then if they allow it, they could, as you said before, they could sell it off to somebody else, put in something different. So we're, at this portion, we're stuck, but obviously we will, if they get the zoning, we will see this again, and that's where we'll have a more definitive say. But
Right.
it is tough when you're looking at what can go into that zone if you approve it with hopes of this going in, and then
Right.
it opens it up under the zoning code.
right. I think because there is still that buffer of the single-family lot on the backside, on the Willard Street side, kind of makes that a little bit more appealing to, yeah. Still have a lot there that can be built, but that it is a concern. But, we'll be watching when it comes back, Mr. Flood, and make sure you keep to your word.
If this goes through, this only applies to this project, nothing else.
Right. If we recommend it, it has to go before the city council, and they have the final vote. So,
Back to what it is now.
right, the city council is they can either allow the zone change or deny it. So regardless of what we vote tonight, it's not definitive. Our vote is only a recommendation. And so sometimes they go along with our recommendation, sometimes in their ultimate wisdom, they do not. Sometimes the council might get more input and more participation by neighbors than what we received tonight, but basically they have the final say on the zone change, and if the zones change, then they come back for site plan back before us. So if he wants to put this in, he would definitely have to come back before us if it gets approved in the zone change.
Is there a time period that they have to do something about that?
Once they change the zone, no. Once they want to put the site plan in and they file it, then they have to come in before us in a certain time period, correct?
But there's no time period to be built.
No. Once they change the zone, the zone stays that way until someone comes in for an application for a site plan.
For a building, for that building, or for
Any building at all. Once the zones change, they don't have to develop it if they don't want to until a future date. Say, for example, Mr. Flood's client decides, I don't want to go forward, the zone's been changed, they can sell it off to anybody else, and that person can consider what they'd like to do.
Well, they can build anything they want after.
Only what's allowed under that zone, and that would have to come back before us anyways. Yeah, so there will be restrictions either way. So regardless of what we do tonight, this still has 2 more public hearings to go to at the most. At the least, if they get turned down to zoning, then they have to come in and build what they have a right to do so.
Right now, there's no definite date or definite
Right.
time that they have to do that.
So the main thing is what happens is, regardless of our vote tonight, if the applicant pursues it, it goes back before the city council. Whenever zone change comes up, it has to go to the council first, then they recommend it to us, and the city council votes to send it to us for our recommendation. Then our recommendation goes back to them, then they have to set up and advertise for public hearing. Okay?
But there's no time limit.
No. I mean, when they do the zone change. If the zone change was approved, they don't have to build at any particular time. Right. Thank you, sir. So backing up a little bit, I have no further questions on it. Basically, hopefully, I didn't hear about the press release today, but obviously that would help your project. I think if that thing is going to be developed. I said, I didn't have the benefit of hearing that press release today, but obviously if that's allowed and this project goes through, it will clean up that site very nicely, so. Okay.
Comment on
Okay, thank you. So at this point in time, we'll entertain a motion to, what we do is a recommendation either for the zone change or against the zone change.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the extension of the traditional mixed-use zoning district to include the back portion of 1141 Bridge Street.
Motion's been made that we recommend approval for the zoning change. Do I hear a second?
Second that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion's made and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes yes. So the recommendation is in favor of the zone change. As indicated, this matter will go back to the city council, and then they'll have a public hearing on that matter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, we will.
We're going to start talking fast.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Moving along, under old business, I'm going to bring up one matter. We did receive a letter in our packet tonight that was signed by Attorney James Hall, and this is regarding 1782 Middlesex Street and 610 Wood Street. Mr. Hall indicated that he's met with the neighbors, and at this point in time, he's requesting, as a result of the meeting, they agreed to withdraw the application that we had approved, and they will maybe come in with a site plan in the future. I think the vote would have to be more that, not that they withdraw the site plan. I believe what would have to do would be withdraw the site plan and would have to vacate our prior order. Our order was that we allowed this site plan to be approved. At this time, the applicant's requesting to be withdrawn to work favorable, to work with the neighbors, then bring it back for a future date. So at this time, under old business, we'll entertain whether we're going to allow the site plan to stay as approved, or allow the applicant to withdraw it, and we vacate our prior vote.
Mr. Chairman, in light of the letter from Attorney Hall requesting withdrawal, I would move that we allow the applicant to withdraw their application and further move that the board vacate their decision for approval without prejudice. Let it come in at a future date.
Motion's been made. Any discussion or a second?
A second. the motion.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, second the matter. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes, so that matter has been withdrawn and the approval has been vacated. Moving along tonight, we do have notices from abutting towns. I entertain a motion that we place those on file.
So moved.
Chairman, I'll make a motion.
Moved it in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Moving along. Moving along, we do have two zoning board of appeal matters before us this evening. These matters will be on for public hearing on June 9th here in the City Council chambers. These are two matters, which will be Monday night. These are two matters that come before us for recommendation only. The first matter is for the applicant, James Young. The property is located at 94 Florence Road, and it's a suburban, single-family neighborhood. And the petitioner is requesting to build an addition without the required rear yard setback. We do have a plan. They're requesting an insufficient rear back. They're requesting a therapy pool for a 9-year-old handicap, physical therapy, need for wheelchair access in the safety zone. We do have a copy of the plan and indicating that the relief that they are requesting from the yard is approximately 3 feet and 4 inches.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, in light of the request, and it looks like the variance that they're requesting is probably minimal at best, 3.3 or 3.4 feet at the most. I'd recommend approval.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Therefore, we'll send a recommendation to the zoning board of appeals in favor. The next matter is for Stephen Lawrenson on 7 Sagamore Street. And this is a traditional multifamily zone to construct a single-family dwelling without required lot area, lot frontage, rear yard, side yard, and to exceed the maximum front yard setback for section 5.1. We do have a copy of the plan. As indicated, they need 4,500 square feet. They only have 2,370, so the relief for the minimum lot is over 2,000 feet. Minimum frontage, he shot 15 feet. Minimum front yard, he shot 4 feet. Minimum rear yard is 9.6 feet. Minimum side yard is 14.5 feet. Lot area per dwelling, he shot 1,630 square feet. There is a copy of a plan for our consideration. I think it has a foundation in the plan already, and it wants to move around it, I believe.
Right. One of the things we don't know, Mr. Chairman, it does outline an existing stone foundation. I don't know if there was previously a dwelling on that that got destroyed in some fashion or whatever. But this being an undersized lot, if they were going to rebuild it on that existing stone foundation, they'd have to do it within a certain period of time. It appears to me that they're abandoning that foundation, moving to put up another dwelling, which is quite a large dwelling for a 2,370 square foot lot, which is very, very small in my opinion. I would certainly recommend that this not be approved.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Too much.
Aye.
Hearing that, we recommend a denial on the Sagamore Street to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Moving along, the only thing else we have is general correspondences. Tonight, we did receive for our package consideration an update on indication of the Hamilton Canal District. I know it's nice reading. We'll consider that for our general correspondences. And any further old business, many board members? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion's made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have adjourned. Good night, everybody, and go Celtics.